Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Remember, Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you check out Alex Ramos and Jackie Richardson on Facebook. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Weekly, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I would like to welcome in from Max Boxing and Blood on My Notebook, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Mike. How you doing? Great to be with you.
And I would like to bring up Blood on My Notebook is the best boxing book I have read this year, but it is also the only book I've even read this year. So.
All right. Well, I'll take it because I'll take anything. So, throw the money my way. I'll take it. So thank you very much for that.
All right. We're going to pay you just as much as we did last time we had you on, John.
Ouch.
All right. We have some interesting breaking news that just came across, too. Eminem and Lil Wayne are going to perform at the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. fight, which is going to be fought with pillows on their hands and no knockouts allowed. $49.95 is what this is going to cost. You paying for it, John?
Not a chance. Not a chance. It's a fiasco. I like Roy Jones. I like Tyson when he was younger. I followed them to a degree, but this is just. I like the fact that it's a charity thing, Mike. That's good. But Roy Jones is taking everything he can get. That's fine. I have no problem with that. They can do whatever they want. Me personally, they're going to have a couple of YouTubers fighting on there too. From what like you're saying,
yeah.
Nah, they're going to do next. Have rappers in between the rounds, instead of ring girls. I got no interest. No interest.
Actually, it would not surprise me if they had rappers in between rounds.
Would surprise me either. Just a money grab, as we were saying earlier, and they can take it and run with it, and that's fine with me. I got no interest, really. Everybody's going to be talking about it, and you've seen that on Facebook already. People are all going crazy, and that's kind of sad, Mike, that people can go bonkers over an exhibition. The only times I ever comment on Facebook, I would write exhibition, because you got two guys. You're right. They got pillows on their hands. They signed a contract where they won't be going for a knockout. Come on, man. That isn't what we want to see, right? Hell, that's fake. That's like a Hollywood movie or something. But at least they'd have a fake knockout in a Hollywood movie. So this is no good.
It's something Vince McMahon would do,
right? And that's fine. If it was part of the whole WWE thing, World Wrestling Entertainment, I don't have a problem with that. That's cool. But they're going to charge you $50 to watch this.
Yeah, but Eminem and Lil Wayne are going to be on.
I think I'll pass.
I'd rather watch Eminem and Lil Wayne fight if they were going to fight to the death.
True. Now, see, my son is going to say, "Dad, what are you doing ripping on Eminem?" Because he really likes Eminem, and Eminem's fine, but it's a show. What did somebody say? We like freak shows in America. So I guess I could. It sounds kind of harsh, probably.
Well, we have a freak show every 4 years with presidential elections.
This is true.
Yeah. And we're going to have another one this year. But
it's America.
Promoter Bob Arum, how about this with a little other boxing news? A legitimate fight. A fight I think all boxing fans are looking forward to. Vasil Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. This could air live on ESPN, Arum says now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that fight. We were talking about it earlier. That's one I'd really love to see, Mike. I hope it happens. Teofimo was talking about this one's got to be in front of the crowd, and Lomo's saying I don't care. Let's just fight. So it's an interesting back and forth between the two guys, and you got the classic older guy and the younger guy, and I want to see it. I'm desperate to see it. It's a fight. This fight was the one I was looking forward to this year more than any of the big heavyweights, of course, who, we can talk about them later if you want. But this is, you got the young guy, the older guy, like I said, you got Loma, who hasn't fought for a while. You got Teofimo, obviously hasn't fought for a while, but he's young and he's fresh and he's overconfident. You got Loma, who's like, okay, I want to see your father when I beat you. So you got a lot of intangibles going on. So this, I hope it happens. They said October 3rd they're shooting for.
Yeah, that's what I think. And my take on it is this. I would normally think Bob Arum's full of crap because Bob Arum is usually full of crap. But if college football does go away, which looks possible, I think if there's no college football, I think you do see this on regular ESPN because you put it with a couple of the big title fights, and then instead of Michigan, Ohio State, you got Lopez against Lomachenko, and you have a big event for ESPN, which ESPN's sorely lacking right now.
Yeah, Bob Arum, I mean, he came back with boxing. I don't know, the viewership wasn't that huge. It was exciting when it came back just because we hadn't seen it in a while. But see, I didn't have a problem with it, Mike, because it showcased some young fighters that wouldn't usually get the showcase that they, I mean, obviously Shakur Stevenson would, but other fighters you might not have heard of. I saw a heavyweight from Ohio that I was kind of impressed with. Not that I'm remembering his name right now, but that's just because I'm old as dirt. But I like that. So you got to give it to Arum. He's trying to get something going here with boxing, even if there isn't a big crowd involved, even if it's just 15 people separated by whatever. I want the fight to happen. I hope it happens. I can wait if it doesn't. But I think boxing, that would be a really kicking a boot in the butt for boxing. No, the only problem is maybe not everybody knows these two guys, but if they publicize it right and get everybody talking, we'll be writing about it. You know, I really want it to happen.
Yeah, and my concern here is Loma has not looked as good as last couple fights. Struggled a little bit with Luke Campbell. It's going to be almost a year off, and when you're a little bit older, a little bit smaller, I think that downtime could really cause him a problem.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. Loma looked good against Campbell, but he had moments where he didn't look that good. And we were saying earlier, he got hit with an uppercut that seemed to wobble him. He's a little more reckless now than he used to be, and that's made him more exciting. But it's also hurt him a little bit where he gets hit more. And Teofimo, as we know, he's got dynamite in those hands, and he's fast. So Loma's going to be have to be his best. Teddy Atlas is predicting that Teofimo's going to beat Lomachenko. I'm not going to go that far. I'm still giving the edge to Loma, but it's not no blowout fight. A couple of years ago, as we were saying, I think Loma with all the angles and a little younger, a little fresher, not 400 plus fights under his belt, well, amateur fights, but he's just younger. His legs, yeah, he wins easy. But right now, I think this is I would have had it like 60-40 a few years ago. Now it's 52-48, maybe. Not a toss-up, but it's getting closer.
Well, I got to see more from Lopez to pick Lopez. He hadn't fought anybody like Lomachenko. I think Lomachenko is a damn good boxer. So yeah. Hopefully we get to see that fight because that would be something, especially on regular ESPN at the times the way they are right now, I think could really help boxing. Now, Bob Arum is also talking about making a long, elusive fight against Manny Pacquiao next for Terrence Crawford. What's your take on that?
Well, that's obviously a good fight. I don't think it's really a good fight for Manny. They always say every great old fighter has one good effort left. And that effort he made against Thurman, who, as we know, was flawed and everything, but still, that might have been it. And he ran out of gas later in the fight, even though he came back. And Crawford, he looked a little. It's an interesting idea because Crawford looked a little vulnerable, and he has looked vulnerable in other fights, Mike. I don't know how many you've seen. So I obviously like Crawford, and Manny's now 41 years old. He's an incredible fighter, obviously, to last all these years. I'm like a throwback. He's had over 70 fights, and he's still damn good. He still can beat a lot of guys. I can't see him beating Crawford though, but I can see him being competitive. But I just think that Crawford probably wear him down, maybe even stop him, which I don't want to see. I wanted him to retire after he beat Thurman, but I certainly understand why he keeps going. The money is all there, and he wants the money. I don't blame him at all. But, I give the edge to Crawford, and he wasn't going to fight Crawford before. So maybe because Crawford got knocked down, even though they didn't call it in his last fight, Manny and his people are thinking, you know what? We get in tip-top shape. We got a good chance to beat this guy, and Crawford's 32, but he's good and everything. He's really good. I've seen things that, like I said, bothered me earlier in his career, and he gets hit with some shots. So who knows? Manny and his team probably felt like, hey, we got a legitimate shot here.
Yeah, and then that leaves Errol Spence, who now they're saying today that he is supposed to fight Danny Garcia in November. What's your take on that matchup if it was to happen?
Well, a few days ago, I read on social media that there was a lot of questions about Errol Spence, what kind of shape he was really in, after that horrific automobile accident that somehow he survived. He wasn't sparring. He still had issues. So if he's going to fight in November, obviously he's got a lot of time to get ready. He must not be in too bad a shape, or he needs the money. That could be – it's probably everything thrown in. I think he has the edge, obviously. Danny Garcia is more a counterpuncher. And he might get to do a little chin check on Errol, which would be interesting. He can catch him with one of those left hooks. But Errol looked good against Sean Porter. I mean, Sean Porter is a tough guy to beat no matter who you are. I don't care how good you are. Sean gives 1,000,000%. He's always in great shape. So you beat him, you accomplished something. Now, that was before the automobile accident. So a lot of the story is going to be, Mike, is what's he look like? What's he got? Has he lost anything? And then Danny Garcia, he's going to be Danny Garcia. So I give the edge to Spence. But, again, there's going to be a lot of question marks before that fight all about Errol Spence, because we're just not sure what he's going to be after what happened to him.
So does it make sense to fight a Danny Garcia, your first fight back after the accident?
Not really. To me, I would have did a tune-up, but they don't do all that. They don't fight. Obviously, with everything going on, everything's been turned upside down with the pandemic. So I would have done that if I was Errol Spence's team. I would have said, let's do a tune-up. But maybe that they're not doing a tune-up because they're confident he's good to go and there's no issues. Rumors flying that he's not, and he's in bad shape and all that. This makes me think that they're confident, or there's something else going on, which is pure speculation. But I think they're confident he can get in good shape and beat Danny Garcia, and he better be in good shape, and he better be himself, or he's not going to beat him.
All right, now I know one of the fights both of us are looking forward to is Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. What did you think of Joe Joyce this past weekend?
He was a fighting guy, lost 3 in a row and got stopped. So he did his job. Like they say in the boxing, he got the job done. He did what he was supposed to do. That's the quote we hear all the time. I don't know. He's pretty good. He surprised me against Brian Jennings. He won a medal. He's pretty good. He's one of those guys that he wins, but he almost never impresses me. I don't know what it is about the guy. He looked fine, but I think Daniel Dubois is just better. Even at 22 years old, even with whatever, maybe not as much experience, amateur experience, whatever. I think Daniel Dubois is got better skills already than Joe Joyce. And I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. And talk about chin check. Daniel has not been chin checked. So I think that's very interesting to see what happens with that. What will happen if Joyce, who hits hard, it's more of a clubbing puncher, but he hits hard, hits Daniel Dubois. What will happen? So I give the edge to Dubois, but Joyce is still kind of a mystery man to me. I don't know. He's like, okay. That's about all I can say at this point.
Yeah, I like Dubois too. I think there's a lot more upside with Dubois than there is with Joyce. Another young heavyweight I'm not a big fan of. Maybe you are. Is Tony Yoka. It looks like he's going to fight Dubois September 25th in Paris. What's your take on Yoka? This is a little bit of a step up for Yoka against Dubois. I assume Yoka will take care of business there because Dubois has a tendency to kind of be a punching bag, but he's a little bit better of a punching bag than Yoka's been fighting.
Yoka, I saw him a few years ago. He was working with Virgil Hunter. I'm not sure if he's still working with Virgil Hunter. I really like Virgil Hunter. Anybody that works with Virgil Hunter, I think, is going to be better. So that will help. But the jury is Mr. Cliche here. The jury is way out on Yoka. I don't know. I mean, he's pretty good. He's tall and he can jab pretty good. But I don't know. He's got to fight a live body. Like we like to say, he's got to fight somebody who's going to fight him back. I don't know if this guy, maybe a little bit. This guy's going to give him a little bit more of a fight, but. He's okay, but again, I don't know. I need to see more of him. I need to see. The key to me in boxing, Mike, and I think it's like this in any sport, is you want to see how a guy does when he gets taken to a place where he's never been taken. Then you kind of find out how he responds. It has to happen to a young fighter at some point. Will it happen to Yoko in this fight? I doubt it, but. he's got some ability, so we just have to wait and see. You know, with boxing, that's one of these things. You just wait and see until they move up, and then the answers come.
All right, another guy, Alexander Usyk, who seems like he hasn't fought in like 10 years. He may be 45 by now, but apparently him and Derek Chisora are going to go ahead and fight October, maybe November is what Eddie Hearn says. So when you look at that fight, I mean, is this how dangerous of a fight is this for Usyk?
Not really much, I don't think. I think he's got the boxing skill that he should be able to handle Chisora pretty easily. He's good. I like him. This is a guy that goes to everybody's backyard and fights everybody no matter what and wins. Reminds me sometimes of a much larger, obviously, Lomachenko. He's got angles. He likes to fight. He likes to mix it up. He's definitely damn good. Chisora, I like Chisora too, just because he's such a gutsy dude, and he'll fight everybody. But I think Usyk should win that one relatively easy, Mike. You know, he's a good fighter.
Yeah, I think the only thing that would worry me there is just the inactivity. First fight at heavyweight, which I don't think is a big difference if you're a good cruiserweight, which Usyk obviously is. But that time off worries me a little bit, John.
Yeah, that is going to be playing in with a lot of fighters, I think, because most of them have been off for a long time. So it is going to be, I don't care what they say. Yeah, you might be working in the gym, but you get in a real fight like that, even if there aren't any people, it's different. So not necessarily a rust, but a mindset and everything. That always makes it intriguing. Most of the time, it's fine, and I'm pretty sure it will be this time with Usyk too. He's got all the talent to have no problems with Chisora, I think.
All right, and then finally, Dillian White against Alexander Povetkin, August 22nd. To me, this is a really interesting fight because I think Povetkin still has a little bit left. I think there's no doubt technically he's better than Dillian White. I assume White will probably get him late, but this is another good heavyweight matchup.
Oh, absolutely. Dillian White he's pretty good, but he's flawed. You know, we've seen him. He beat Joseph Parker barely. Joseph had him in a lot of trouble. He knocked Joseph Parker down. He's a tough guy, hits hard and everything. Povetkin, he's what, 40? Is he 40 years old now? But he's still got something in the tank. And he might be able to catch Dillian White early. If he can catch him early, I think he can beat him. I do, but I agree with you. He's probably going to get stopped around round 10 or something like that, round 11. But I'm just like you. I'm totally intrigued by this one. I think Povetkin is going to be motivated. He's going to want to, obviously, so is White. But he's got some skills. He's got some game, Povetkin. So White isn't on his game because he tends to gain a lot of weight. If he doesn't come in good shape, he's in trouble. He should win, but I'm not a betting man, but I would think about maybe putting some money down for that one.
All right, so we like to do a little on this day usually on the Inside Boxing Weekly show. And today, since we haven't been around for a few months, we're just going to go on this month. And the reason I picked this fight is because you see a lot of people on social media. If you could sit ringside at any one fight, which fight would it be? There's three of them for me. Ali Frazier 1, Louis Schmeling 2, and July 4th, 1910, Jack Johnson defending the heavyweight title against former undefeated champion James J. Jeffries. And this is 1910. It was the first fight of the century. And what was at stake here was more than just a heavyweight championship of the world. You had a black man in Johnson who was the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He took the belt from Canadian Tommy Burns in 1908, and he was thought of by the white public as being wholly unfit to hold the title. And with Jeffries, you had an undefeated former champion, and he was the most legitimate of the notorious Great White Hopes that people were trying to find somebody who could beat Jack Johnson. They got him off an alfalfa farm. I think he'd been retired for what, John, 5 years. He was way overweight. And this is a fight to me. If I could go back in time, this might be my number one pick to sit ringside at.
Yeah, you rub elbows with Jack London, you know, who was there to report on the fight. John L. Sullivan was there. James J. Corbett was in Jeffries. I mean, you're talking about legends. Like them or not as people, doesn't matter. You're talking about people that as a boxing fan or historian you've read about most of your life. They're all, Stanley Ketchel was there. It was a few months before he died. I mean, you're talking about the who's who of boxing all in this arena that was built 4 blocks from downtown Reno. Everybody was there, and I don't know. Those are really 3 really, really great fights to go see. But you made a good point. I mean, this wasn't only a boxing match. In a sense, it was like Schmeling and Lewis in the sense that it was historic. You got a black man and a white man, and the buildup was amazing. And Johnson was in his prime, I would say, at this point in 1910. And unfortunately, I got to say this about Jeffries. His legacy is unfortunately tied to this fight. And I did another show where Michael Spink's legacy tends to be tied to his loss to Tyson. I don't think that's right. I think a guy like Jeffries, this is a guy who hadn't fought for 5 years. He's undefeated. He blew out all the heavyweights. Now we can debate. Anyone can debate his ability, but I don't care. He was undefeated. He blew out everybody that was there. Okay, you could argue that maybe he didn't fight some of the guys that were available for him to fight, but whatever. He was the champion. He beat Corbett twice. He beat Fitzsimmons twice. He had a brutal fight with Tom Sharkey. He was a good fighter, is what I'm trying to say. 5 years. We're talking about inactivity a little while ago, Mike, where a guy hasn't fought for almost less than a year. How about 5 years? How about losing 100 pounds? You're not going to be what you once were. Could he have beat him in his prime? Maybe not. But the point is that this fight, like boxing always is, Mike, it was loaded with drama, but mostly because it was the black man against the white man, the first African-American heavyweight champion, and Jeffries, the great white hope, where that all started. I was lucky enough to go to the location numerous times and see it. I mean, obviously, you have to have a massive imagination because it's a lumber yard now. But you can imagine the ring, and the time it started was like 2:20 in the afternoon. It was 100 degrees in Nevada. And talk about significance. Yeah, just because of all the historic people that were there, writers and fighters, and then the fight itself wasn't a great fight, as we know, but the significance, the event, the crowd, everything, that one must have been crazy. So that would be cool to go on some kind of time machine and just walk in there, a few minutes before the first bell or something.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize today how big that event still was. I mean, we talk about racism in society today, but this was an entirely different time. I mean, slavery had only been gone for about 40 or 50 years. And I think for a present-day boxing fan to actually understand the climate of fear and hatred attending this racial tinderbox of a fight is inherently difficult. And you acknowledge this disconnect. It is still remarkable to me to contemplate Jack Johnson's determination to defeat Jeffries despite the danger involved, because this was not a safe place. I mean, most of the people, pretty much all the people in the crowd were white, and they were all on Jeffries' side. And Johnson, I mean, that had to be maybe the most pressure-packed event for almost any athlete, I think, that you could find. I mean, because violence, after all, is a nasty appendage to an event like this, whose ramifications at the time went far beyond boxing. Now, I found a quote from a Christian socialist named Reverdy Ransom, who stated that the greatest marathon race of the ages is about to begin between the white race and the darkest races of mankind. What Jack Johnson seeks to do to Jeffries in the road to Reno will be the ambition of Negroes in every domain of human endeavor. I mean, this is a fight where it was more than just a sporting event.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very revealing quote and very powerful, because I agree. I mean, Jack Johnson has always been fascinating to me. I read some things about him in the last few years that I didn't like, but as a guy who had to deal with this incredible amount of hatred and pressure, the things he did, but the way he acted, the way he smiled, the way he dominated, I mean, he was, in that respect, an amazing fighter. You're right. The pressure must have been just incredible. But from what I read, he was totally calm and cool and collective, and it was Jeffries who was really having a case of the nerves. But Johnson was confident, even fighting, and he figured he would win. But the other pressure that you're talking about, that was a very good point about not just the pressure of fighting Jeffries in the event, the society pressure that was being put on him. I don't think any of us can imagine how that must have felt. Talk about 1,000 pounds on your shoulders or whatever. I don't think there's any way we can really even imagine what that felt like. You're a black man in a arena where almost everybody's white, like you said, and probably 99%, maybe 99.9% of the people, maybe a little less, are pulling against you and hate you and really want to see you get hurt. And then you do what you do, while you're throwing insults back and forth with James J. Corbett. I mean, this guy was a cool guy as far as handling everything that was thrown at him. And that event is just, that is the first fight of the century. And it is aptly named the fight of the century because it was, in a sense, not just because of boxing, like you said, because of the importance of it.
Yeah. And I mean, just like I said, any one event I could be at, it would be this. The thing that's really, shows what our society is. Immediately after the fight, race riots broke out pretty much all over America. The dead were overwhelmingly black. And once again, this is a fight where when the fight was over, there were riots where people died because of the amount of anticipation, the racism, everything that went involved with this. And that day, from what I read, stood as the single worst day for race riots in American history until the unrest and violence of the late 1960s. And like I talked about before with Louis Schmeling II and Ali Frazier, they were culturally significant matches that proved to be kind of a social barometer as it attracted and laid bare kind of America's most dangerous prejudice. And I think what we see in boxing is, we saw it with Holmes Cooney even. Holmes Cooney was 1982. And you still had snipers on the roof because of people threatening to shoot the fighters and threatening to do things. And this is something that even if you just go back a few months, Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder, if you look at social media there, that was a fight that you could just tell by the losing side and the winning side that it meant more to people, even today, when a black man fights a white man, than it probably should.
Yeah. Massive amount of ocean under that bridge and a lot of hard feelings and you're right. And when you were talking about it, I thought of Holmes and Cooney too, because that fight really turned into a modern day Jeffries Johnson in a sense. And it wasn't that they were really comparable as far as the history of Cooney and Holmes, but it was the black man against the white man. And it turned into and it was hell, obviously, as we know, a much better fight than Johnson and Jeffries competitive. But you're right. I thought about that too. And they had snipers on the roof. That's just incredible. That's 1982. That isn't very long ago. That's not 40 years ago, almost now, which is incredible. But and then we have Wilder and Fury. And with social media, you get to see a lot of the ugliness that still exists on both sides at times on what happens between a white man and a black man throwing hands at each other. And it becomes it can get ugly really fast. It's not a sporting contest. Still, there's something more to it, and that's the society thing. And it shouldn't be that way, but that's just how it is in the society.
Well, I think what you got with boxing is tribalism is huge. Jewish boxers in the 20s and 30s, Italians. And it's just, I don't see that there's anything wrong with there's a black guy fighting a white guy. So I'm white, maybe I'm going to cheer for the white guy. You're black, you cheer for the black guy. But at some point, there has to be a line where you got to realize that it's still a sporting event. And if Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder, it doesn't mean the white race is superior, just like it didn't mean that the black race was superior because Larry Holmes beat Jerry Cooney. It's still a sporting event. And you identify more with somebody that's like you, and that's fine. But you also got to draw the line and realize, even though I identify more with this side possibly, that's just, I identify more just because of skin color, which means absolutely nothing in the long run.
And absolutely. People just get crazy. They stop thinking. It is. Sure, your skin color is different, but it's just a sporting event between two guys, and whoever wins, and that should be it. But the long history of this gets thrown in, and it makes people say things and do things that they shouldn't do. And amazingly enough, you were talking about July 4th, 1910. Here it is, 2020, right? 110 years. There's still issues and there's still problems. So it just tells you that this is a problem that is better, obviously, but think about what it was like in 1910. And all you got to do is just read about it. And you have, obviously, with that. But read about the writing of the fight, what they called Jack Johnson, and that was considered okay. I'm not going to repeat the names they called Jack Johnson here, but that didn't raise any eyebrows. You read it now, I read it, and I get plugged to Adam Pollock. Great books on Jack Johnson and James J. Jeffries. The newspaper writing of the day was just, but again, it's 1910, but it's still ugly, and that was just the time, but it was still just difficult to read, So now we've got social media where things are very difficult at times for people.
All right. We have a few comments. We got Hamed, who I know is a longtime listener to the show.
Yes.
Good point, Mike. Race is still a factor. Just look at how the Wilder fans and Wilder approached the fight. I will also say this, though, Hamed. You got to also look at the way Tyson Fury fans approached the fight and the way the fight ended. So it goes both ways on that, I think. Let's see. Let's hide that one. Hamed also wants to know if the show will be uploaded to Spotify, Spreaker, etc. It probably will if I get enough time to do it. We have a comment from who says Mike Tyson is going to knock Roy Jones to sleep. Moises, that cannot happen because they signed the contract agreeing not to knock each other out.
How many people know that, Mike? How many people know that they signed a contract that you can't go for the knockout? How many? I mean, some, but there's an example. He didn't know that, I don't think, unless he thinks that one little punch on the head might be enough. And it's possible, I guess, Roy Jones.
Nelly knocked him out in like the third round, if I remember.
That's true. So, yeah, he might. Yeah, so I guess that could happen. But he's not going to be supposedly going for the knockout.
But they're going to have a 10-part series leading up, showing these guys getting ready for the fight. And I guarantee you, there's still going to be – Roy Jones is still going to be running around saying, you never know, it's Mike Tyson. He's crazy. He might come after me, and I might have to do something. And they're going to hype it up like they might. But in the end, the contract's signed. The money is there. You're not going to see anything but two guys dancing around each other, throwing a punch here or there. It'll be like watching a Floyd Mayweather pay-per-view.
That's what I was thinking.
Everybody's agreed. Nobody gets knocked out. We're just going to look at each other and look pretty. And then they're just going to hope that you like Eminem, Lil Wayne, and Jake Paul or whatever the hell the YouTubers' names are. So I would like to throw John Raspanti's name in the hat. He would like to fight Deontay Wilder for $1 million. So that could be on the undercard.
Okay, $1 million. I could take $1 million and get hit with one punch and go, all right. So he's not knocking me. He's not putting me to sleep, though, Mike. No ways. He won't be able to touch me. I'm too fast still, even at 61. So.
Sure you are, John. All right. I look over your right shoulder and I see a book. I see two books, Blood on My Notebook and Intimate Warfare. Both of them are great books. You want to tell us a little bit about those two books and where people can find them?
Oh, absolutely. And I always thank you for plugging the books. Intimate Warfare is about Gerald Gotti and Mickey Ward, and Dennis Taylor and I wrote it a few years ago, and we loved it. And those guys they are what boxing is to us who likes grit and determination and guts and fire and competitiveness. If you like all that, you're going to like that, because we tried to I had so much fun writing about those fights, Mike, watching them again, stopping it, going back, looking at things, looking for different things. Just a total blast. And then Blood on My Notebook is just my own experiences around boxing, going to a lot of boxing events, talking to fighters. I even wrote a short story I threw in there years ago called The Wait that was a blast to write. So it's and the Blood on My Notebook is a true story about blood just coming down on me when I was watching the fight. Sit there like this, like rain on me. So it's just my own stories about boxing and boxers and fights. And again, the response has been incredible, and I'm barely touch, or as my girlfriend would say, you have a hard time getting into the house sometimes. Your head is so big. Not true. I love all the reviews, and I'm sure there are people out there that are going. But Blood on My Notebook is a personal, got a lot of pride in that one, and it's my story, so absolutely love it.
All right, we have one more comment from Hamed, which will show us that people are interested in Roy Jones and Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Ahmed says, I think the agreement is no judges, no point scoring. There must be a referee to count 10, surely. Yeah, for what I see, nobody's winning this fight except for the promoters and the two fighters and whatever charity is Mike Tyson's giving the money to. The question is this. If they come out and they just box and Mike Tyson looks good, I mean, Mike Tyson's the guy. We already know Roy Jones will continue. Roy Jones will go fight Artur Beterbiev right now without a problem.
No.
So would Mike Tyson continue to fight?
Well, yeah, he's going to fight Holyfield, right? That's what I'm thinking. I think he's going to fight
Yeah,
Roy
but if
Jones.
he fights Holyfield, you know Holyfield's not going to go for this nobody gets knocked out thing.
Maybe that's the little bit of idea behind the whole thing. Maybe that'll be the big selling point. Hey, we supposedly took it. We took it easy, Roy Jones, but Holyfield, we don't know how to take it easy. So we're gonna go it. We're gonna go, and I'm not biting his ear this time. So who knows? It's crazy.
I'll still favor Holyfield, even though he looks more shot than Tyson does. Because I still think Holyfield would be willing to go through more hell than Mike Tyson would to win a fight.
I think so.
And I think Evander Holyfield is probably in worse shape financially too.
Yeah. I think I read that he was disappointed that his fight with Tyson didn't happen, but he did say that it could happen down the road. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this might be something they're thinking. One fight, then another fight, then who knows?
All right, guys. Anything else we want to talk about, John, before we wrap it up?
Well, I'm just going to say real fast about people who love boxing. We got some really good fights coming up. we got Loma and Teofimo and Katie Taylor's fighting in August, and then Deontay. You get your birthday present in December. So a lot of good things. So boxing fans, hang in. It's coming back. Just hang in. Boxing is trying to make its comeback, and I can't wait.
All right, guys. Me and John will be here every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. Correct, John?
That's correct.
So make sure you tune in every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern, either on our Facebook group page, The Grueling Truth, or on YouTube. Make sure you check out the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. They do great work there. You can find them on Facebook. But for now, for John Raspanti, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth. You've been watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.